What's going on, guys? It's Chris Fitch, and I'm going to take you on a tour of my personal airplane that I use flying out of my personal grass strip. So the first thing I do, just like every flight, is I do a pre-flight inspection and I use my checklist. Although I've been doing this for 15 years, that doesn't mean I am not privy to making mistakes. So just like I teach my students, I'm following a checklist. Just like everything else we've done in Sub 2 in the airplane world, checklist, checklist, checklist. I'm not in a situation to where I can memorize everything. So when I get into something that I haven't done in a while, I use a checklist. So the first thing I do is I read where I'm at. So I come inside the airplane and I turn my master switch on, which is this little red button right here. I turn it on, and then I turn all of my lights on, which is all of these switches right here. And then I make sure they work. So what I'm looking for is that blue light to be on. That's a navigation light. And then I walk around to the front. I make sure the landing and the taxi light are on. And these are actually two separate purposes. One's for taxiing, one's for landing. They're tilted at a separate angle. And then I'm looking for my other navigation light, which is red. And then the two final things I'm looking for is my rotating beacon, which is the red light that's going in a circle, and my navigation light, which is white, and it's on the tail. And then I come back inside the airplane and turn everything back off. So I push all of these buttons back in. And then I turn the master switch off, and that preserves my battery life. And then what I do from here is I extend my flaps all the way to 40 degrees. So that's 10, 20, 30, 40. Now, in the newer models, the flaps are electric, but in the older models, they're via a Johnson bar. They're manually operated flaps, and they've got 4 different settings: 10, 20, 30, and 40 degrees. So this is actually where I start my pre-flight inspection. I start it right here at the tire. I make sure that I don't have any wire thread showing. I check my brake pad. I make sure there's no fluid leaking or anything like that. And then I shut the cabin door and I work my way to the front of the airplane, and I come down and I make sure I have at least 3 fingers of chrome showing on the strut. And then I'm looking at my tire for general condition. I'm making sure my shimmy damper is there. I'm making sure everything's in a general condition. Now, is it going to be dirty? Of course, but what I'm really looking for is any loose bolts, any missing bolts, the strut coming down, this being loose or off. I'm looking for this cotter pin right here to be in place. So it's the general condition of the aircraft. I am a mechanic. I am an airframes and power plants mechanic with inspection authorization, so the FAA would consider me a highly rated mechanic. But when I'm in pilot mode, I stay in pilot mode. I'm not looking to create maintenance items for me to fix. I'm looking for general condition of the airplane for me to go fly it. So I'm wearing a separate hat right now. Then I work my way over. I look at the exhaust. I make sure that's in a good condition. It's stable. And then I'm running my fingers around the prop. I'm checking the condition of the propeller. And what I'm really looking for is that there's no nicks. And if there is a nick, if it's deeper than my thumbnail, that's something I want to address. I'm making sure all the screws are on the spinner. And then right here, I take a little pause. I read. I make sure I'm not missing anything. All right. Now, I check to make sure the general condition inside this cowling is there. I'm looking sure that these aren't bent. If these are bent, that could disrupt my cooling mechanism for my engine. I'm also looking to make sure there's no bird nest or anything like that. I'm making sure my air filter is in a good, clean condition. That's how this airplane intakes its air. So if this were to be covered up like this with a piece of plastic or a bag or a bunch of debris, out here in the grass strip, lots of grass gets stuck like this. I want to make sure that's clear so that the airplane can breathe. And then I'm checking my exhaust stack. Same thing, making sure it's not loose, not coming off. Everything's there. And then I make my way back inside this engine cabin. All right, so the first thing I'm doing is I'm looking in here to make sure there's no nests, nothing getting built in there. It's in a general condition. And when I mean general condition, wires aren't disconnected, oil cap is in place. I'm checking my oil to make sure we have sufficient quantity, and we do. And I'm also checking the color of the oil. You see how on my hand, it's not completely dark? That's a good looking color of oil, all right? If it's golden like this, that's a good thing. It means it's not burning a lot of carbon, all right? A lot of lead. So if it's really black, it's not a bad thing, but it could be better. It could be golden like it is now. This is a good color for the oil. That's what I'm really looking for. That tells me that my engine's operating at an optimal fuel to air ratio. If it was really dark, that means I'm burning off a lot of lead. That's not necessarily a good thing. Then I put this back, I make sure it's there. I make sure this cap is in place, and then I make sure nothing is disconnected. All right, and then I close it back up, and anything that I open, I make sure it's completely secure. And then I come back down here and check this side. Again, bolts there, Goddard keys there, same on all my hardware. Checking this side of my tire, and then I move on. I'm looking at my windscreen, make sure it's not cracked or crazed. I'm looking in all of these, they're essentially holes right here. This is for the airflow. This is how you get your air conditioning. So if you look inside of there, that's our air vent. That's how we get fresh air in here. So what you don't want is a wasp nest in there, because as soon as you get going, it's gonna blow right into your face. And then you move over your pitot tube. You wanna make sure that's free and clear. So you've got your pitot tube right there. And then you've also got a drain port right there. There's a little tiny hole right there that you wanna make sure is free and clear as well. And it's a little tiny hole. Very important in the wintertime to make sure there's no frozen ice or anything in there. And then your fuel vent, you want to make sure that's free and clear. And then your stall horn. If you can hear it, there's a little click right there. I want that click to be, I want to hear it. And the reason for that is that when it gets to that point right there and clicks, that means I'm about to exceed my critical angle of attack. It's about to stall the airplane. So what the airplane is really telling me is when I get my airflow to this point, it'll suck it up. So let's say this is my center of pressure, center of lift, and I'm pulling back on the stick. The lift starts to come here, comes over the top, sucks that up, and the airplane is literally telling me, hey, release some back pressure, push the nose over. So the airplane will talk to you. General condition of the wing, make sure the wing is in a good condition. I've seen bird strikes to where you put pretty big dents in the wing, and at that point you definitely want to call maintenance. Our wing doesn't have that issue. We already checked the lights. Now we're going to check the ailerons. When this one goes up, that one goes down. That's called a differential aileron. So what it really means is this has a greater up travel than that does have a down travel. And I do the exact same thing. So my up aileron is on the right-hand side now, and this is the down aileron. And then I'm coming in here, I'm making sure I have a little play right there. If you can hear that, that's what I'm looking for. And if you can see, I always have positive control of the aileron. And the reason for that is if a gust of wind were to catch this aileron, my fingers are in there. That would hurt a lot. And then I move on to my flap. I make sure my flap has a little play. And a little play, my rod right there. That's a good thing. And then again, general condition. And then on this side, I'm doing the same exact thing. looking for tire wear and tear, making sure all the nuts and bolts are there, making sure there's no hide fluid leaking. Brake pad's not too worn down, which it isn't, I can see it from here. And then I move my way back. I'm looking at my windows again, not crazed or cracked or anything crazy. Make sure my antennas are in place. General condition. Again, I'm not in maintenance mode, I'm in pilot mode. So I'm looking for just general safety of the aircraft. Coming over here, making sure all my flight control surfaces move free and clear before I get in the airplane. And then same with the tail, all the way right, all the way left. And I'm making sure nothing got built up in there. And then I'm also checking on this side that the trim moves with the aileron, or not the aileron, the elevator, sorry. And it does. So I'm pretty happy so far. And then we move on, we continue our pre-flight inspection. And if you notice, my hands are touching the back of everything on the flight control surfaces. And the reason for that is if there was a dent, my finger would go into the dent. I would feel it. It would give me a reason to investigate further. A lot of the times it's no big deal, but that's when I need to put the maintenance hat on and get the pilot hat off. And then I look underneath. General condition underneath the airplane. Everything looks good to me on this side. And then I take a pause. I look at where I'm at in the checklist, and then I move on again. General condition, it's got play in the flap, it's got play in the rod, and then I move to this side, all the way up, all the way down. When I go up, I got play in the rod, and then I walk all the way around. I've already checked the light, then I'm checking my surfaces. And then the last thing I do is I put this away and I check my fuel. The reason I'm checking my fuel is to make sure it's not contaminated and to make sure it's the right color. So how I do that is I push this little guy up like this. And if you can see, I'm looking for debris. Anything other than the color blue. The color blue is a good thing. That means it's avgas. It's the right color. It's blue. That's what I'm looking for. And I'm also looking for any oil that sinks to the bottom or any water. So that side is good. So we'll dump that out. And then we'll come to the other side. And we'll do the same thing on the other side.
You should show us where you put the gas in.
I will. So same thing. It's blue, there's no debris, there's no fuel, and there's no water. And the main thing I'm looking for is water, especially out here. There's a lot of condensation. And then there's one final and that's your blue tube. I'm coming back underneath and I'm making sure I didn't miss anything. Yep, there we go. All right. All right. We'll get rid of that. Now you see that? You see all that water in there? That's the lowest point in the tank. So that's a good thing. This is where you want it to come down to. And then you just keep going until there's no more water in there. Now you see how that one doesn't have any water in the fuel? Now, just for safety reasons, I'm gonna do it again. There's plenty of gas in here, so it's no issue for me to just keep draining it. Now you see how that has no water or debris in it? That's what we want to see. Now we've purged the tank of any water that was in the system. Now we make sure our fuel caps are secured. So I'm going to put this away and climb up top. All right. All right. Oh. Hold up. There we go. All right, so what I'm doing now is I'm climbing up top to make sure my fill caps are secured. All right, that one's good. And I'll do the other side. So what I just did is I climbed up top to make sure my fuel cap was in place and it was fully secured. All right, and that one's fully secured as well. Now we get in the airplane and we go fly.